I think there are a lot of assumptions we make, and there's a lot of trends we look at in an overly simplistic way. And the problem with doing that is it leads us to asking the wrong questions, and then we come up with the wrong answers. Sure, there are challenges associated with population ageing, but what we believe is that ageing is actually an opportunity. The evidence is now showing that there is a clear economic benefit as the proportion of children in the population drops, which is what happens when a country develops economically. So in Asia, 30% of the Asian economic miracle was due to a fall in the proportion of young people. And what people then expect, because there's more people in working ages, what people then expected was that bubble will move through to older age, and then it will be a burden on the community, and it will cost, and there will be a negative impact on economic growth. In fact, that's not panning out in that same way. And we think the reason is that the implications of old age are much more flexible than it is for having a high proportion of young people in the population. So that older people can actually continue to contribute in many, many ways, some of them not particularly obvious. And also, older people are a repository of knowledge, which if we can draw on is actually a benefit for society. So the assumption that an ageing population is a problem is wrong. One of the interesting things about ageing is diversity. We tend to stereotype older people and think that they're in this box, but in fact older people, it's an incredible range. There are 85-year-old older people who hold down incredibly high pressure jobs, are incredibly healthy and basically performing like a 35-year-old. And on the other hand, there are 65-year-old people who are actually quite functionally disabled and very poor health and require a lot of day-to-day support. The challenge in coming up with the solutions to ageing are that we need to, on the one hand, liberate that wonderful resource of healthy older people, and on the other hand, provide a safety net for the older people who really need it. If you look at the social media, the fastest growing segment of the population using social media is actually older people. And if you look at people who use the internet, the heaviest users of the internet, not the proportion of the population who use it, but if you use it, how heavily do you use it, is actually older people in many places. So once they break down that barrier, actually technology and information technology in particular is a real boon to older people. In certainly monitoring of health status, there's a lot of ways now where we can do remote monitoring, which may or may not lead to better health care because we'll be able to detect changes early. But I think there's also things like lifelong learning. I was really interested to learn that these days there are a lot of university level units that are available on the web. It's a big movement. Millions and millions of people are using these online learning opportunities. And I think over the next 5 or 10 years, we're going to find that teaching is going to really dramatically advance in its ability to be tailored to the needs of different segments of the population. And I think that's going to be a real opportunity for older people. Because we have this stereotype that people work till they're 60, 62, 65, whatever a retirement age is, as people start to get nearer and nearer that retirement age, employers think, why would I bother spending money to maintain this person's skills because they're going to retire? And then of course the person loses the skills which make them relevant to the workforce, and that they become unemployable, and so the employer is happy to see them go. Whereas if they'd maintained those skills 50, 55, 60, then when that person gets to 60, 65, they're much more relevant to that employer. The employer doesn't have to employ a new person, saves on all those costs, and they also retain the judgment, which actually is an advantage that older people have over younger people. You know, it's not, okay, an older person's got this job so a younger person doesn't. The economy is something where the more that we grow, the more that we produce, the more people who are participating, the more jobs there are. So taking a job away from an older person, first of all, doesn't create a job for a younger person, but what it does is it pushes an older person into being dependent on that younger person for the next 20 or 30 years. I think let's throw the whole game out and start again. And let's say, okay, let's think of a continuum, and let's say at different stages in our careers, different stages in our lives, we may want to work in a certain way. We may need an apprenticeship type work where we actually have a lot of mentoring to support us through to be more effective. There may be times when we want to opt out and actually have some leisure time at younger years. We may want to write the great novel we've always wanted to write. We may want to have children. We may want to change careers. Kids today will probably live till they're 90 or 100. They'll be planning their lives differently than I did when I was expecting to live to 70. They may actually live considerably longer. If you know you're going to live that period of time, you will plan your life differently. You will think, well, yes, actually, I've got time to opt out and actually get a work-life balance. But we haven't got it at the moment. We're in this transition between this old model and a new model. I can't tell you what the new model will finally be, but I know that it's not going to be like the 20th century. It's going to be something much more flexible where people can have their cake and eat it too, where they can have a family, where they can have some time to themselves, but also where they can seriously pursue a career and achieve the things they want to achieve.